Ho, boys and girls, it's that time of the week again. Balancing Pokemon, specifically Kanto Pokemon right now. Project Pocket Monster. Last time we ended on the Doug Trios. And this time we're going to begin with the Persians. Now, if you're new to the series, first 3 parts, links, they're in the description. Comes out pretty much every Tuesday, unless otherwise specified. I don't have the amount of subscribers to have the community feed unlocked. I would use that all of the freaking time if I did. But we're going to get there. So basically this series is us going through and looking at old Pokemon, going through and trying to bring them more up to speed. Over the course of the last 20 years, Pokemon has exhibited something known as power creep. I've explained power creep a whole bunch of times, but I'm going to do it again just for, clarification's sake. Power creep is when new utilities or abilities are introduced that make old ones irrelevant. So you think of something like Typhlosion came out Generation 2. Typhlosion's pretty okay, pretty good speed tier, pretty good special attack stat, but something like Blacephalon, who came out in Generation 7, a little bit better speed tier, secondary stab typing, way better ability, and way better special attack. So it's just a case of, oh, Typhlosion's just completely outclassed. Like, why would you use Typhlosion over this Pokemon, etc., etc. Hey everybody, it's a different day. But if you guys have already heard all the assumptions and you've previously watched other parts of the series, you know exactly what we're doing, so I'm going to save you some time, and you can just go to that time right there and get right on with the rebalancing. You don't need to listen to me prattle on about all this stuff. So when we're going through and we're balancing these Pokemon, there's a few things we need to consider. We're not changing the type chart or type matchups. We're not changing the effects of abilities, so even though certain abilities are straight up bad, like, Leaf Guard or Healer or something, you know what I mean? We're not going to change those effects to make them any better. We are sort of working with what we got. That being said, we're not changing the base power or power points of any already existing moves. So it's not like, oh, Astonish is only 30 base power. Let's crank that up to 80. We're not going to do anything like that. We're working with what we got. Probably the most notable thing, the notable assumption is that these changes that we make, they have to fit thematically. When I mean thematically, that has to make sense for the Pokemon. We're not going to give a Pokemon like Magmar Giga Drain. Just because why would Magmar get Giga Drain? Like, what about Magmar shouts that it needs that move or could be able to learn that move, etc., etc. And these changes have to make sense on previous established lore. So a lot of the times you'll see some of the changes that I make are specifically referencing certain portions of Pokemon lore, as well as the Pokédex entries. Notably, like last episode, I gave Venomoth Scale Shot because all of Venomoth's Pokédex entries always reference its scales. So I thought, okay, of course it makes sense. Like, no, Venomoth's not a dragon, but it makes sense for it to get Scale Shot because that's just something that Venomoth sort of does. And once again, this isn't a meta. We're in Generation 8 right now, but this is a meta, assumedly without Mega Evolution, Z-moves, or Dynamaxing or Gigantamaxing. I totally forgot what it was called for a second. This is just so we get a better picture on, how all of these mons interact with each other. We don't want to include all of this cyclical stuff that Game Freak has notably, taken in and out of games. Like right now, Mega Evolution Z-moves are in Sword and Shield. We don't know if they will return. They probably won't, I don't think. Crown Tundra drops very soon, though. And we'll see. I doubt they're going to return. But also, we don't know if they're going to get rid of Dynamaxing or Gigantamaxing next generation for whatever new thing that they come up with, because, that's why we're here. We're here to make things make a little bit more sense. So starting right off the bat with Persian. Persian's bad. Persian is actually really, really bad. It's got, no bulk. Its attacking stats are really lackluster. Base 70 attack and base 65 special attack are nothing crazy. The only thing going for it is its pretty decent speed tier. Right now it's got a speed of 115, which is actually pretty solid, but it doesn't really get a chance to utilize that speed well because it can't really hit hard at all. Limber and Technician makes sense. Cats are limber. Technician is a very good ability, and I'd hate to strip Persian of something like that. But Unnerve, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. So the first thing that I had thought of when deciding what to do with Persian was to sort of bring it back to its roots. In Generation 1, Red and Blue, Persian was known as a Pokemon who would always get a critical hit. Critical hits, they worked a little bit differently in Generation 1. It was based on the speed stat as well as the certain value of the moves. So if a Persian was running Slash, because it's so fast, it's pretty much guaranteed to get a crit. I think it's like 99% of the time it's going to be a crit, or 1 out of like 251 times it won't be, or I don't know, something crazy like that. So it's always going to be a crit. And I thought that would actually be a really cool thing to base a Pokemon on. Or rather, tweak a Pokemon on. So instead of Unnerve, I'm opting to give Persian Super Luck. Super Luck means that it increases the chance for Persian to get critical hits. And this is compounded by the fact that I want to buff Persian's attacking stats and speed stats a little bit. Base 440 stat total isn't very good at all. It's frail, it doesn't hit very hard, and it doesn't even have any sort of good support options to use with this, high speed stat. It does get access to Nasty Plot already, but boosting a base 65 special attack with Nasty Plot, that's not really that good. So instead, being the physical one of the two Persians, I'm opting to give Persian 25 points into its regular attack stat, boosting it up to a pretty modest 95. I want to give 14 to its special attack, bringing it up to 79, and I also want to add 6 more into its speed. My logic here is that I give regular Raichu 10 more points into its speed, so it's 120 base speed, and I think the cat should outspeed the mouse. So 121 base speed, just 6 points, just to put it over the edge. Outspeed base 120s, still going to get outsped by base 125s. Now this makes Persian more kept up with the times. 115 was very, very good in Red and Blue, but that sort of has fallen off by now. There are Pokemon faster than it, and it needs to have that sort of speed in order to do what it wants to do. Now, as far as its moves go, so I want to give Persian access to Crush Claw, Quick Attack, and Echoed Voice. While Crush Claw is not boosted by either Technician or really helped out at all by Super Luck, it makes sense. Persian's got these huge meaty claws. It is a cat. Something like, Zangoose has Crush Claw, and I think that being able to lower an opponent's defense is a pretty good tool for Persian to have. Quick Attack and Echoed Voice, however, they are boosted by Technician, and I was surprised that Persian actually hadn't gotten Quick Attack first. I mean, look at the thing. It's literally like, it's a cat. Like, it's a normal type cat who doesn't get Quick Attack. So many things get Quick Attack, but Persian didn't, so I was like, okay, duh, Persian should get Quick Attack. Echoed Voice. Now, this is boosted by Technician, but also because we buffed Persian's special attack stat, it's actually going to get fairly strong. So if you run like an Echoed Voice Technician special attacking Persian, maybe with like a Nasty Plot or something, it's going to hurt. As far as its coverage moves, I went a little bit crazy here. Now, I wanted to give him a lot of moves that could capitalize off of the idea of critical hits. X-Scissor to me made sense. So many Pokemon get X-Scissor. I was surprised, again, that Persian didn't get X-Scissor. It's a scratching move. It's a slicing move. I mean, it's Persian, Pursuit. Cats pursue things. Knock off. You ever seen a cat knock, like, a milk jug or cup of water off a table? Like, I mean, that cats knock things off. Psycho Cut, Cross Poison. Both of them high critical chance moves. I think that, it fits with sort of Persian's theme as this critical hit monster, and it doesn't exactly help all too much. It's not going to make Persian busted having access to a bunch of moves. Generation 1 Pokemon in particular, they're known for their huge movesets and ability to use a whole plethora of different things at their disposal. Now, Alolan Persian got Burning Jealousy, but regular Persian didn't in Generation 8. So I was like, okay, let's just give regular Persian Burning Jealousy. Give it a fire type move. Like, whatever. That's not going to change anything. Metal Claw, boosted by Technician, as well as having a chance to increase its own attack stat, which is actually fairly nice. Gives it some coverage for fairy types, along with Cross Poison. And Acrobatics. Now, cats are known acrobats. I don't even need to tell you about that. So you could run, Focus Sash, Acrobatics, lead set with Fake Out, or something like that, coverage for fighting types, coverage for grass types, just different things like that. Let Persian be more diverse in what it does, what it can bring to a battle, as well as, these high critical hit moves. You could run, you could run Focus Energy, I don't even care. And you'll get a crit like 100% of the time. Now, as far as setup and support, I only wanted to give Persian Glare. I think this makes sense. Cats, in the dark, they got these beady eyes that, you know, reflect light like crazy. They glare. So many Pokemon get glare that I'm like, okay, interesting. Most of them are like snakes and that kind of thing, but cats also glare. So I wanted to give Persian glare. Now this capitalizes off of its very fast speed stat, so it can come in, it can lead, it can glare, and then it can start either firing off, you know, knockoffs, pursuits, echoed voices, start getting boosted with Metal Claw. It's got priority and quick attack. It's got fake out already. So Persian sort of becomes this, you know, harder hitting lead Pokemon with the ability to get crits, generate momentum, that sort of thing, you know, and even have speed control with glare. So I think this makes Persian actually pretty good. This brings Persian's base stat total to 485, which isn't that crazy at all. 121 speed lets it outspeed base 120s. 95 attack is pretty modest, and 79 special attacks also pretty modest. But I think that all these tools and more kind of go a ways to defining more of a niche for Persian as a fast, normal type critical hit machine. Now, Alolan Persian, on the other hand, I already consider to be okay of a Pokemon. It's not great by any means. It's got Parting Shot. It has Technician and Fur Coat, which actually make it a little bit better than regular Persian, on top of having a Dark type. But there are still some rules I like to follow. Now, I usually like to give the Alolan forms of Pokemon, I usually like to give them the same base stat total as their regular forms. I think it would be really weird to have one form of a Pokemon have a much higher base stat total than another form of a Pokemon. But I have wanted to thematically separate and also gameplay-wise separate what these Pokemon do. So that being said, I wanted to make, since regular Persian is a fast, critical hit dealing physical attacker, I wanted to make Alolan Persian a little bit more of a special attacker. So as far as its stats go, I want to give its regular attack 14 points, giving it up to a total of 74. Now, we already gave regular Persian 14 points into its special attack, so I think it makes sense. We're trying to focus on Alolan Persian being more special, so we give the lesser value to its lesser stat. So this brings it up to 74, so it makes it a little more usable. We're going to buff its defense, actually, by 10 points. This lets it take advantage of Fur Coat a little bit better, as well as padding its bulk. You know, Fur Coat multiplies the defense by 2. And I think that actually really helps Persian. 10 more points into its defense means it can take hits, it can last longer, etc., etc. Because we wanted Alolan Persian to be the special attacker, I gave it 20 points into its special attack stat, instead of 25 now. The reason being is that I didn't want it to be 100. Regular Persian's attack stat is 95 now, so I wanted Alolan Persian's special attack to mirror that with 95. And lastly, I'm giving it a single point into its speed stat. This outspeeds other base 115s. That's pretty much the only reason why. I didn't want to make it 121 speed because I think that Alolan Persian is a little bit chunkier, so it shouldn't be nearly as fast. Also, with the options that it gets, it does get Parting Shot, so you know it didn't need to be even faster than it already was. Fur Coat and Technician, both very good abilities. We talked about Technician in Persian section. Fur Coat doubles the defense, but Rattled, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't really need to boost its speed stat, especially now that it's 116 instead of 115. You know, so instead I opted to give Alolan Persian Infiltrator. Infiltrator is an ability that isn't given to a whole lot of Pokemon, but it lets Alolan Persian hit things that are behind a substitute. Yeah, no, that's all it does. But it comes in handy. You know, Persian can come in. It can knock off things behind a substitute. It can, you know, potentially pursuit things or quick attack things, or I think it even lets it would let it glare behind a substitute. I'm almost positive that's how that would work. This sort of lets it, you know, function in a better support role, as well as can act as a revenge killer if things start getting too out of control. You can come in, you can cripple the threat behind the sub, you can, you know, paralyze it, toxic it if you're running toxic, etc., etc. Infiltrator is just better than Rattled, and I think it makes sense. Persian's a dark type, you know, dark types are sneaky and suspicious and all that sort of stuff. As far as its moves go, I wanted to give it Pursuit and Knockoff as well. We gave it to regular Persian, and I think it makes a lot of sense on Alolan Persian just because it's a dark type already. Cats pursue things. Cats knock things off tables. Once again, cats knock things off tables. And its coverage moves. Now, we're not going to go as crazy with the coverage moves because I already think Alolan Persian's pretty okay. We are going to give it Metal Claw. And we're going to give it the 3 normal type moves we gave regular Persian, being Crush Claw, Quick Attack, and Echoed Voice. And we're also going to give it Acrobatics. Now, what we're not going to give it, we're not going to give it Cross Poison, we're not going to give it Psycho Cut, we're not going to give it X Scissor, and it already has Burning Jealousy, so we don't need to do that. And lastly, I also want to give Alolan Persian Glare, because look at those eyes. That is a glare if I've ever seen one. Now, I already thought Alolan Persian was pretty okay, but this gives it a little bit more of a niche. It's a little bit faster, hits a little bit harder, has the ability to, you know, run either to a defensive set, you know, a harder hitting technician set, or it can function as sort of a, you know, a fail-safe in case something is behind a sub and you need to come in and glare it or knock off whatever item it has, you know, that sort of thing. It was already pretty good. Just made it a little better just because, you know, if we're buffing the original form of the Pokemon, we should buff the Alolan form of the Pokemon, which is something that you'll see. Yeah, no, and that's our new and improved Alolan Persian. And now to the meat of the video, or rather, the duck of the video. Okay, so Golduck. Now this is we're gonna need to do a lot here. Golduck is one of the most forgotten solo water types in the entire franchise. Its base stats are actually a little bit above average. It does have a base stat total of 500. Its best stat being its special attacking stat being 95. But it's completely overshadowed not only by other better Swift swimmers, it's overshadowed by water types in its own generation. It's worse than Lapras, it's worse than Starmie, it's worse than Cloyster, it's worse than pretty much everything except for Dugong. It's worse than, what did I say? Slowbro? Yeah, I didn't say Slowbro. Starmie? Yeah. But, yeah, so Golduck is, all things considered, very, very bad, very mediocre. It's never been that good. It has had the ability to run, like, a Choice Spec set. It can potentially run a Choice Scarf set, but odds are you're going to have something better for that. So, we need to go the extra mile when it comes to buffing Golduck. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is the most obvious thing, is that we're going to give it a Psychic typing. It's going to be a Water Psychic type. Now, you know, it's pre-evolution. It's named Psyduck. It's described that the gem in its head has psychic powers. Like, there's no secret that Golduck should have and always should have been a Psychic type, a Water Psychic type. This does in fact put it in direct competition with its fellow Water Psychic types being Starmie and Slowbro. Starmie being a fast special attacker, and Slowbro being a special attacking defensive pivot / wall. It does have Regenerator. Both of those Pokemon are way better than Golduck in so many different ways. So there are some ways that we need to separate Golduck from those two. And I thought the best way to do that was actually to make Golduck a physical attacker. So that being said, as far as its stats go, I want to give 18 into its attack stat, bringing it up to a solid 100 even attack stat. This puts Golduck, you know, its Liquidations hit harder, its Zen Headbutts hit harder. It is, you know, being physical attacker, physically oriented with those two types is a sort of a rarity, and it separates itself from the other Water Psychic types. That being said, we're taking 10 away from its special attack, as well as buffing its speed by 7 points, bringing it up to 92. This puts it at a solid 515 base stat total, which is actually a little bit better, and it also gives it more of a clear, defined niche. I thought that Golduck should have been a physical attacker in the first place, because, like, look at those. It's got, like, these flipper claw things, and I think that, you know, being physical sort of makes sense for it. You're already noticing the abilities. So yes, I want to give Golduck Magic Guard. I think that Cloud9 and Swift Swim are fine. I think that there's better Swift Swimmers already, but I think Cloud9's pretty unique. But Damp is pretty bad. But Magic Guard lets Golduck do a couple of things. It lets it sponge status attacks, so now, you know, Toxics and Burns aren't going to be hurting it. It lets it run a Life Orb set if it wants to, letting it hit harder with either of its two attacking stats. I mean, 85 base special attack still isn't that bad, but I want Golduck to be leaning more toward the physically offensive side. So a Life Orb, you know, Liquidation, a Life Orb, actually it might not even get Liquidation, a Life Orb Waterfall, a Life Orb Zen Headbutt. It's going to hurt a lot more coming off and not having to take the recoil damage that's associated with the Life Orb is super, super nice. Being able to switch into statuses as well and not have to worry about it is also really nice. Magic Guard in general is just a very, very good ability. I think it makes sense. Ooh, man, this is, again, one of those times where I just went through the entire list of moves, and I was like, okay, what makes sense? So, Golduck is now a Psychic type, so I think it makes sense to give it more Psychic type moves. Extrasensory, Stored Power, and Expanding Force. With Magic Guard, this lets Golduck potentially, run Calm Mind set. I think Golduck gets, what other sort of boosting moves does Golduck get? It gets Calm Mind, it gets Amnesia. You could run a Amnesia Stored Power set if you really, really wanted to, and you're not taking any sort of damage from the Life Orb that you have or Toxic that they're trying to hit you with. This sort of makes Golduck like a Clefable, which is kind of dumb, but, obviously it's weak to more things. Not having Unaware is a pretty big boon for it, and not having any sort of reliable recovery as well. Coverage moves, it is a bird. Look at that beak. Give it Brave Bird, give it Pluck, and finally give it Acrobatics. Acrobatics makes sense. It's literally based on a swimmer. It's able to flip, turn, and do all these things in the water. It saves people from drowning from ships. It's mentioned all the time in its Pokédex entry and that sort of thing. Dazzling Gleam, I think, makes sense because it does have this gem in its forehead. And then also, and this is something I'm really excited about, Mind Blown. Now, Mind Blown is an attack that cuts the user's HP in half while dealing a very, very significant chunk of Fire-type damage. It gives Golduck a pretty good option to hit, Grass Steel types as well as Bug Steel types. It lets it deal with, Scizor and Ferrothorn in a pinch in exchange for half of its HP. Now, the reason that I decided to give it Mind Blown was because of this scene right here. I'm not going to be playing the audio in it, just the video. You guys know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen Detective Pikachu, it's a trip. Go see it. It's kind of fun. I don't want to say it's incredible, but there's definitely some moments that make me laugh. I love Ryan Reynolds. Love the guy who played the main character, Justice something. I forget his name, but definitely check it out. Yes, so Mind Blown makes sense. It makes Golduck super interesting as a water type that gets Fire type coverage. That's really, really cool. And as setup and support goes, I did, again, just go down the list. I want to give it Miracle Eye, Psycho Shift. So, with Magic Guard Psycho Shift, you could run a Flame Orb, and you could do a Sigilyph Blood Totem with Golduck. Or you could Psycho Shift a Toxic Orb or something like that. Little things like that make, make a Pokemon what it is. And I think that actually benefits Golduck a lot. Telekinesis, Instruct, Psychic Terrain, and Reflect. Now, I believe Golduck gets Light Screen. And yes, this is just one of those Pokemon that I'm like, why would you give it one of these screens and not the other? So I just opted to give it Reflect. This gives Golduck a plethora of Psychic-type support options, a couple of Psychic-type stabs, as well as a pretty decent physical move pool that it can utilize, now being a physical attacker. Now again, Golduck still doesn't have any sort of reliable recovery, so you can't really spam Mind Blown. Brave Bird, again, it'll do, still do recoil damage even with Magic Guard. So the ability in Magic Guard, the stats that we gave it, as well as a whole bunch of coverage moves that we gave it, make Golduck a lot better than it previously was. It now has an edge over its other Water Psychic type Generation 1 brethren. It is a physical attacker now. It has, a couple of really interesting coverage moves in Mind Blown and Brave Bird, as well as having options to potentially run a, Sigilyph Blood Totem-esque set with Magic Guard, Psycho Shift, not being able to take damage from Life Orb, as well as, Burn or Toxic is really, really helpful for Golduck and actually makes it a good deal better, in my opinion. So Primeape is a fighting type that exists in Pokemon. Now, you wouldn't know that because it's so outclassed by a whole plethora of other fighting types, both legendary and non-legendary. You think fighting types, you think Conkeldurr, you think Machamp, even something less known like a Sawk. They're all better than Primeape. They're all pure fighting types. That's not even including legendary fighting types and other things that are straight up just better than Primeape. So I thought going into it, Primeape's already okay. It already functions as a sort of a revenge killer. It runs a Choice Scarf, goes pretty fast, hits decently hard with a fighting type. But there are things that I would like to change about Primeape. Now, the first thing is I'm going to talk about its abilities. So Anger Point and Defiant both make sense. Anger Point because it's a seriously angry monkey, and Defiant's actually pretty good because it comes in on either webs or an Intimidate user comes in, it gets a attack boost, which is pretty good. Now, Vital Spirit, while it makes sense, I thought of a different ability that Primeape could use that only one Pokemon other than it has right now, and that is Guerrilla Tactics. Now, Guerrilla Tactics is an ability. It's Galarian Darmanitan's signature ability, and what it does is it's basically a choice band of an ability. So this is a choice banded Primeape that's not able or doesn't have an item slot being taken up. So you can run Choice Scarf, a Guerrilla Tactic, something, and this makes Primeape a whole bunch better because it boosts its attack stat to really, really good levels. That's why I didn't boost its attack stat in the first place. Guerrilla Tactics definitely lends itself to what Primeape is known to do. It chases people to the ends of the earth. It's literally like a crazy monkey that just looking at it will get you killed or beaten up really, really badly. So that's why I opted not to boost its attack stat at all. Instead, giving it an ability that puts it, in a fairly unique category. I think it makes more sense for Primeape to get it as far as something like this weird snowman-looking thing. I added 10 points to its defense, 70 both all around. It's never going to use its special attack, so I'm going to subtract 15 from that, and we're going to dump 14 points into its speed stat, making it 109 speed. So now Primeape it's fast. It hits hard with Guerrilla Tactics. It can still opt to run Anger Point or Defiant, but you're probably always going to use Primeape as a revenge killer, but this makes it all the better. Now, as far as its moves go, I want to give it Wake Up Slap, Jump Kick, Arm Thrust, and Power Up Punch. It's known for just a ton of, crazy tactics to hurt the opposing Pokemon. Coverage moves, it does have Iron Tail. I want to give it Play Rough, and I want to give it Iron Head. Both of these help Primeape's kit a lot. Let it stand out as in what it does. Not a lot of fighting types get Play Rough. But I think Primeape sort of deserves it because it's literally, it's a ruffian. It hurts things really bad. And then also another Generation 8 staple. This one, the signature move of Phalanx, is No Retreat. Now, Primeape's Pokédex entries reference it being willing to chase things until the end of the earth if it gets angry at them. And if that's not retreating, I don't know what is. Now, keep in mind, you can't run Guerrilla Tactics and No Retreat at the same time. So if you're Defiant, No Retreat, you're Omni boosting your Primeape, you're going to be doing crazy amounts of damage. I think that this makes Primeape very, very unique. All we did was go in and we capitalized what Primeape was good at. Now, Guerrilla Tactics, it doesn't hit as hard as Galarian Darmanitan. It also doesn't have the same crazy coverage Galarian Darmanitan does, but this does make Primeape very, very good as far as a revenge-killing fighting type. It may be too good, but that's okay. I'm still willing to let Primeape exist how it does right now. Let me know if you think Primeape's too good. I think Guerrilla Tactics is actually really interesting of ability to give to a Pokemon like Primeape. But we'll see. We'll see. I might need to tweak its attack stat or something like that. That brings us to Arcanine. Now, Arcanine is already very good. It's got base 555 base stats, which is actually absurd. Flash Fire, Intimidate, and Justified are all very good as well. Gets Reliable Recovery with the addition of Booties. It's even a little bit better in Generation 8. Gets Teleport. Will-O-Wisp, it's a pretty good defensive fire type that can hit pretty hard as well as have reliable recovery. Arcanine's fine. We're not going to be touching Arcanine at all. It's already used a decent amount, as well as probably being one of my favorite Pokemon. So I would like to buff it, but I do think that it's already pretty good, so we're not even going to touch it. Which brings us to the last Pokemon of the video, being Poliwrath. Now, Poliwrath, again, is a water type from Generation 1 that is relatively outclassed by a number of other water types. It was the original water fighting type. Now, Keldeo just blew it out of the water entirely. Poliwrath already has a couple of pretty neat things going for it. For instance, its access to Circle Throw means that it can just sort of, phase Pokemon on out of there. Swift Swim and Water Absorb, totally fine abilities. no issue with them. What I am going to be doing, though, to make Poliwrath stand out from these other water types is I'm going to be giving it pure power. Now, Poliwrath is said to like shatter boulders with its fists and that sort of crazy stuff, so I think it makes sense for it to get pure power. Unlike something like Azumarill, which doesn't make any sense that it gets huge power, Poliwrath makes sense. That in mind, 95 base attack cannot stay on a Pokemon like this. So we're subtracting 35 base attack from it, bringing it down to 60, putting it on the same level as a Metacham, albeit a little bit slower. We're going to give 10 more to its special attack to sort of compensate for that, as well as only a 5-point addition to its speed, making it slightly slower than Metacham, but hit exactly the same level of hard. This lets Poliwrath potentially be a Scarfer with, you know, a lot of power behind it. It can still run Water Absorb. It can be, you know, the same sort of phasing tank that it once was, but it can also be a phasing tank with pure power, which is actually, you know, very, very good. And now, as far as additional moves go, I'm not going to go too crazy with this. Storm Throw is a move that previously Poliwrath didn't have access to. It's always a critical hit. So even if its, you know, attack stat is lowered by an Intimidate user or something like that, Storm Throw will always crit. Power Up Punch lets it boost a little bit. Poliwrath does already get access to Belly Drum, so in that sense, it is a water fighting type Azumarill. So it gets Belly Drum with the pure power, boosting its attack stat to absolutely absurd levels. But it's fine because it doesn't have a crazy speed tier anyway. I want to give it Aqua Jet, and I want to give it Flip Turn, so it can function literally more as a pivot with having some priority. You can't do everything at once with Poliwrath, so, you know, I'm not too worried about that. Having to run, you know, Aqua Jet, also Flip Turn, also Belly Drum, also, you know, what? Potentially Power Up Punch or something like that. Like, there's only so many things that Poliwrath will be able to do. Maybe a Circle Throw, I don't know. It has like the 4 move slot syndrome. As far as coverage goes, I want to give it Brutal Swing. And setup and support, I want to give it Mat Block. Now, Mat Block was a move exclusive to Greninja. Doesn't have an effect in singles, has an effect in doubles, but I consider Poliwrath to be sort of like a, you know, like a water-type sumo. I just thought it made a lot of sense. I thought it'd be pretty cool for Poliwrath to have it. And that being said, that is where we're going to end off this video. Remember, guys, if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. I do this every single week. Let me know your thoughts on Mind Blown Golduck. Let me know your thoughts on Guerrilla Tactics Primeape. And let me know your thoughts on the crit machine that is Persian, as well as Pure Power Poliwrath. I love saying the Pure Power Poliwrath. Oh my god. Try saying that 5 times fast. I'm going to get on out of here. Again, thank you all for watching. Let me know, talk to me in the comments about, you know, what you do and all this sort of stuff. I love hearing about it. Yeah, so till next time.